Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and are you sick and tired of reading boring books where authors just won't quit their yapping? Well, I've got the solution for you with 5 fast-paced sci-fi books that'll have you turning the pages with mystery, intrigue, and if you're lucky, lasers. So let's get into them, starting with Daemon by Daniel Suarez. So Daemon combines some of my favorite elements of the detective story along with the techno-thriller and also a little bit of cyberpunk. This book follows the story of a famous video game developer that passes away, and when he does so, it triggers a series of murders. So we follow a number of characters including detectives as well as hackers in order to find out whether something called the Daemon can be contained. I have heard a few people say this book was a little too heavy on the technical details, and I didn't really find that to be the case. I think if you can enjoy an author like Michael Crichton, then you can have a good time with Daniel Suarez. This book is set in the modern day, or at least modern when it was written, so there isn't too much technobabble. He's not making up too many new words, or at least I don't think so. I'm not a computer scientist, but they sounded real to me. And something that I think that Daniel Suarez does really well, and something that I enjoy in sci-fi, is him taking an idea and seeing how far we can push it. What are the consequences of this? If we take this to the nth degree, what would that look like? And that's what he does in terms of digital technology, the internet, the computers. If you had brilliant minds, a lot of time and resources, what could we really do with that? And it's kind of scary. I think this book will also appeal to fans of video games. Some of the story plays out in some virtual worlds, including a first-person shooter that reminded me of some of the early Call of Duty games or Medal of Honor. And another one is an MMORPG that I never really played this game, but it sort of reminded me a little bit of World of Warcraft. So if you enjoy those experiences, those atmosphere, it might bring back some good feelings for you. And sometimes when I read a book that goes into something virtual, someone's playing a game, it just kind of makes me feel left out. It's like, well, this character's having fun, but I just kind of wish I was playing the game instead of reading this book. But I think Daniel Suarez did a great job of really capturing the atmosphere, telling the story. I felt like I was there and I was having just as much fun, or almost as much fun, as if I was actually playing the game myself. I think Daniel Suarez is a master of plot development. Pretty much the end of every chapter had me wanting to read the next one, and there's so much going on here. There's quite a lot of characters, quite a lot of narrative threads, but something that I appreciated was I could always see how they were perhaps going to be connected. They always felt like they were leading somewhere. It wasn't a slog in order to see why I was reading any of these chapters. Pretty much all of the narrative threads were as interesting as the other. And when he does finally bring them together, not only is it in a satisfying way, he also does it in a way that manages to continuously up the stakes. This book builds to some pretty crazy set pieces towards the end, which were super cinematic. I kind of wanted to see this book on screen, although it would require a rather crazy budget in order to do it justice. And while I do think this is a more plot-focused book than it is a character-focused book, I did like some of the characters as well. They are a little bit tropey, but as the book goes on, we do unpack some pretty serious emotions, and I was invested in some of the characters as people, although some of them, not so much. Kind of seedy, was rooting against them, and I think that's a good thing too. Just a quick warning for you, I think in the first 100 pages or so of this book, there is a scene of kind of a disturbing sexual nature, but after that, there isn't anything too crazy, although there is a decent amount of violence throughout the book. So just wanted to let you know if that is a factor for you when choosing what to pick up. So Daemon is the first book in a duology, and its sequel is called Freedom. I just finished Daemon last week and ordered Freedom right away, and I'm looking forward to reading that one next month. Daemon does kind of finish on a little bit of a cliffhanger. There's a bit of an arc that it completes, but it definitely feels like one story that has been split into 2 books. So if you pick this up, you are probably committing to around a 1,000-page story, but it's just so good. You'll probably finish it in about a week if you want to. Check out Daemon. Up next, we have Old Man's War by John Scalzi. Old Man's War is a military sci-fi book that follows in the footsteps of the Forever War and Starship Troopers, where we follow a group of recruits as they go through boot camp. However, the twist is, rather than the military recruiting new young soldiers in order to fight these battles in space, they recruit senior citizens. They want the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience of older people in order to help win these wars. But while they might not be physically able, at least you would think, in order to participate in these battles, they give them new bodies. So it's this kind of fun dynamic where you have old brains and personalities in young, fresh, strong bodies, and sending them out to war. So there's a lot of mixed emotions here, because there's the kind of the excitement of the new body that you get from the military, but then you ascend into the incredibly harsh realities of war. Now, this is a military sci-fi book, but it's also rather comedic. John Scalzi writes quite a lot of humorous dialogue, and the main character can be rather cranky and sarcastic, which, if the tone works for you, I think you're going to have a great time with this book. Me, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I felt like there were some really funny moments, but at times the particular sense of humor started to wear thin for me just a little bit, but overall I think it added to the story. This book can be a little bit tropey, but Scalzi introduced some pretty cool sci-fi concepts, especially in the back half, that I really connected with, and I felt like it added a sort of a fresh perspective onto the military sci-fi genre. I felt like the book came to a satisfying conclusion, but this is the first book in a series, so I think it's good news either way. If you really enjoy this book and you want to read more, there's more. But if you just want to check out this one book and stop there, I think it holds up as a standalone. Moving on, we have The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. First of all, this is a great title for a book. 15 lives, that's pretty intriguing. I mean, that's 14 more than me and 6 more than a cat. Plus, it's only the first 15 lives? There's more coming for this Harry August fella? Alright, I'm on board already. So as you can probably guess, this is a time travel / time loop story, which is one of my favorite subgenres, and it automatically comes with some pretty interesting questions, such as, why is this character in the time loop? Or, what would I do with my life if I could do it over again, / had to do it over and over again? And is there anybody else out there experiencing something similar, or is there anybody that can help me with this peculiar situation? I think this book might appeal to fans of historical fiction, as due to the nature of time travel, we do get to experience some different periods, and I think a strength of Claire North as a writer is being able to capture these different periods. The atmosphere, the descriptions, the tone, the setting, the language, all felt really vivid, and I enjoy kind of bouncing back and forth and getting to experience all of them. This book shares some similarities with the book Replay by Ken Grimwood, which I'm also a fan of. I think in the case of Replay, it is perhaps a little bit more introspective, a little bit more focused, a little bit more personal. And in Harry August, we do get some of those elements, but I think it is a little bit more fast-paced, a little bit more plot-driven, there's a little bit more intrigue, and I think it's a little bit grander in terms of the scale and its stakes. So whether you're an experienced sci-fi reader or you're newer to the genre, I think there's a good chance you're going to enjoy The First 15 Lives of Harry August. And just before we get to our last 2 books, if you're a fan of sci-fi and you want to hang out and talk about some more books, check out the links in the description to my Discord server, as well as my Patreon memberships. Up next, Altered Carbon by Richard K. Morgan. Altered Carbon takes place in a world where people's minds can be downloaded, stored, and then uploaded into a new body known as a sleeve. And the main character that we follow is a criminal, so he isn't really in control of his own destiny, his own sleeve. That is dependent on him completing a job. The job which he is given is tracking down a wealthy man's own murderer. Altered Carbon is a top-notch detective story that takes place in a grim cyberpunk world that puts the punk in cyberpunk. Everything about it is so sleazy and grimy, and it's dark and violent, and everything from the people and the personalities right down to the tech, the body modifications, it's all stuff that just really gets under your skin. Altered Carbon is set in a vivid world, and I think its characters have a lot of personality as well. And as we go on this journey to try and unravel this mystery, I think we uncover a lot of thematic layers as well. I think there's a lot of discussions on some pretty important issues, and I felt this was a rather impactful read for me. In terms of the content in this book, there are some scenes which are rather disturbing and visceral and uncomfortable in their violent nature. Now, I didn't find it gratuitous just for the sake of gratuitous violence. I think it does help heighten the stakes of the book, as well as increase the thematic impact that it has, but due to their nature, I can certainly understand why this book might not be for everyone. I think Altered Carbon is a classic in the cyberpunk genre, and it's one that has really stayed with me after having finished it, and I think has impressed me even more over time. And lastly, Dogs of War by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Dogs of War, like Old Man's War, is a military sci-fi book, but this time instead of following senior citizens, we follow some bioengineered super soldiers made from animals. Our main character Rex is a dog soldier, and Rex just wants to be a good boy, but unfortunately all of the commands that Rex has been taught are acts of war. Now if you hear this premise and you are interested in why exactly these soldiers were created and how they were created, Tchaikovsky doesn't really deliver on that, but if you can just accept the premise and follow the line of questioning of, well, if such a thing exists, what would it be like for those individual characters, and what would the implications be for society at large? Then I think you're going to have a better time with this book, because I think Tchaikovsky does a really good job of answering those questions. I think the plot in this book is driven by some great action, but I also think there's some amazing character development. I really became invested in the main characters and was really grappling emotionally with the situations that they were put in, as well as the characters themselves grappling with their own emotions. The book is split into parts, which I think helps keep the pacing up, as each part does a good job of introducing new ideas, exploring them, and then moving on to the next one. I will say at the end, I felt like the story got away from Tchaikovsky just a little bit. I think he maybe tried to do a little bit too much. It might have benefited from being just a little bit more focused, because I think the things it did well, it did really well. I think Dogs of War can be read on its own, but if you liked it and you want to read more, there is a sequel, Bearhead, and a third book that is coming out in 2025 called Beastspeaker. So those are 5 fast-paced sci-fi books. There are a number of books that I could have chosen for this video. I mean, pretty much any Blake Crouch or Andy Weir book would have been a good choice, but I've talked a bit about those before. If you haven't read them, definitely give them a chance. And head down to the comments and let me know what are some of your favorite page-turning sci-fi books. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash, or just gently click, the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima, and New Eden, Half Ogre, Zakawe, and the Altered Colin. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.